Godzilla. Monarch classifies him as Titanus Gojira, and he is the last confirmed member of his species. He stood 108.2 meters tall when he surfaced in 2014, and by the time he tore King Ghidorah apart in Boston 5 years later, he had grown to 119.8 meters, roughly the height of a 40-story building. He was first encountered in 1954, and the Castle Bravo hydrogen bomb test in the Pacific that year was not a test at all. It was an assassination attempt. It failed. His atomic breath is generated in a nuclear reaction inside his body, channeled up his spine as his dorsal plates flare blue, and in 2024 he killed the sea titan Tiamat, occupied her radiation-flooded Arctic lair, and came out the other side glowing magenta with his plates reshaped into jagged pink spikes. He sleeps in the Colosseum in Rome now. He earned it. Dagon. Long before Monarch had a name for him, his corpse was the reason a mining operation in the Philippines collapsed into a cavern in 2014, exposing a fossilized skeleton the size of a city block with a hole punched through its ribs. The 2019 graphic novel Godzilla Aftershock gave the body a name, Dagon, a member of Godzilla's own species and possibly his direct kin, borrowing the title of an ancient Semitic grain and sea deity worshipped across Mesopotamia and Canaan. Dagon did not die of old age. He was hunted, paralyzed, and used as a living incubator by the parasitic titan later designated MUTO Prime, which laid its young inside him and left the husk buried under rock for millions of years. 2 spores in that cavern were still viable. One of them hatched. MUTO. Massive unidentified terrestrial organism was originally a Monarch catch-all designation, but the 2 creatures that emerged in 2014 made the acronym a proper name. The male stood roughly 61 meters with a wingspan far greater, could fly, and discharged electromagnetic pulses that killed every engine and circuit within kilometers. The female was flightless, bulkier, and about 91.4 meters, with a body built around an egg sac. Both fed on radiation, which is why one of them nested in the Janjira nuclear plant in Japan in 1999 and brought the reactor down, and why the other was found dormant in a Yucca Mountain waste repository in Nevada. They were siblings and mates. Godzilla killed the male by slamming him through a building, then pried the female's jaws apart and fired his atomic breath straight down her throat. MUTO Prime. Its formal designation, Titanus Jinshin Mushi, translates roughly as earthquake bug, and at about 106.7 meters, it dwarfed the 2 MUTOs that killed San Francisco. Introduced in the 2019 legendary graphic novel Godzilla Aftershock, MUTO Prime is not a monster in the ordinary sense. It is a parasitoid, the largest known on Earth, and its life cycle requires it to find a member of Godzilla's species, drive an ovipositor through their armor, and seed them with young that mature inside the still-living host. It killed Dagon this way. Its emergence in the modern day was tracked through a chain of earthquakes as it tunneled toward Boston, and the reason it hunts Godzilla's kind specifically is the reason Godzilla hunts it back. The 2 species have been locked in this cycle since the Permian. Kong. When American soldiers and Landsat surveyors reached Skull Island in 1973, Kong was a juvenile of roughly 31.6 meters, already the last of the Titanus Kong bloodline, and already the island's only defense against what lived beneath it. By 2021 he stood 102 meters, and Monarch scientists noted with some alarm that he was still growing. He is not a brawler in the way Godzilla is. He is a tool user. He carries a battle axe forged around a Godzilla dorsal plate, salvaged from a Hollow Earth armory, and in 2024 he was fitted with the Beast Glove, a mechanical gauntlet built by Monarch after his arm was crippled by frostbite. He gave up the surface entirely and moved into the Hollow Earth, where he holds a throne that has been empty for thousands of years. Skull Devil. Skullcrawlers are formally classified Titanus cranium reptant, and the Iwi people of Skull Island had a simpler word for the big one, Devil. 2-legged, skeletal, with an eyeless, skull-shaped head and a prehensile tail, they claw their way up from the hollows beneath the island and eat until nothing living remains. They wiped out Kong's entire species except him. The alpha specimen that surfaced in 1973 was several times the size of the others, big enough to swallow a man whole in a single motion, and it killed Kong's parents when he was still small enough to watch it happen. Kong finished it by ramming a boat propeller through its skull, forcing a chain down its throat, and dragging its own guts out through its mouth. The head alone dwarfed the humans standing over it. Mothra. Titanus Mothra measures only 15.8 meters at the body, which makes her one of the smallest titans in Monarch's active files, but her wingspan reaches 244.8 meters, and she can generate her own light. She was found as an egg in a hidden temple complex in China's Yunnan province, where Outpost 61 was built around a waterfall she had chosen thousands of years earlier. She hatched as a larva, killed a Monarch containment team, then spun a cocoon under that waterfall and emerged with wings patterned in eye spots that glow gold in the dark. She and Godzilla share a genuine symbiotic bond spanning millennia. In Boston, she flew into Ghidorah's gravity beam to shield him and was incinerated, and the radiation from her disintegration is what pushed him into his burning state. King Ghidorah. He is the only Titan on Monarch's list who is not from Earth. Found frozen in a glacier at Outpost 32 in Antarctica, and filed under the codename Monster Zero, he stands 158.8 meters, weighs an estimated 141,000 metric tons, and carries 3 heads on necks that operate with independent personalities. The Castle Bravo crew nicknamed them Ichi, Ni, and Kevin. Sever a head and it regrows within minutes. Each mouth fires a gravity beam that detonates on impact, and his mere presence generates hurricanes with sustained winds strong enough to level coastal cities. He is an invasive species in the truest ecological sense, and when he took the alpha call, he ordered every Titan on the planet to level the nearest population center. Godzilla decapitated the last head in Boston. Alan Jonah later fished the skull out of the wreckage and sold it. Rodan. The people living on Isla de Mara called the thing sleeping in their volcano the Fire Demon, and they were closer to right than Monarch was comfortable admitting. Roughly 46.9 meters tall with a wingspan around 265 meters, Rodan's body runs hot enough to swim in magma, and his flight generates supersonic shockwaves that flatten the island's town without him ever touching it. He is fast, aggressive, and completely opportunistic, which is why he fought Ghidorah first, lost, and then served him without hesitation. When Godzilla killed Ghidorah, Rodan folded his wings and bowed. He resurfaced in the second season of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters in 2026, perched on an active volcano in Thailand in the year 2017, 2 years before he was supposedly still asleep in Mexico, which strongly suggests there is more than one. Queen MUTO. The third MUTO woke in 2019 when Ghidorah's call went out, and Monarch personnel took to calling her Barb, which is either affectionate or gallows humor depending on which agent you ask. She is larger and more heavily built than the female that laid waste to San Francisco, with the same radiation appetite and the same broad, blade-tipped forelimbs, and she made her way to Boston with the rest of Ghidorah's converts. She is also the reason Mothra arrived at the final battle already wounded. The two fought in the ruins, and Mothra drove her stinger through the MUTO's body before turning to face Ghidorah. It was the last kill Mothra made. Monarch's post-battle files list the MUTO species as one of the few groups Godzilla exterminates on sight rather than dominates. Methuselah. For decades, hikers outside Munich walked over a small forested mountain without knowing it had a pulse. Monarch knew, which is why Outpost 67 was built on top of it, and when the Titan stood up in 2019, he took the trees, the topsoil, and a good portion of the local geology with him. Methuselah measures 98 meters, weighs an estimated 170,000 tons, and carries 2 immense curved horns that he uses like a bulldozer blade. Monarch classifies his behavior as protector rather than destroyer, and the King of the Monsters novelization records accounts of him shielding groups of people from disasters in the deep past. He crossed from Germany to Boston in roughly a day, which puts a mountain-sized quadruped at something close to 500 kilometers per hour. Scylla. Imagine a cephalopod that decided to become a spider. Scylla stands 103.9 meters on 8 impossibly thin, jointed legs, with a squid-like head and mantle suspended in the middle of them, and she moves with the twitchy, deliberate creep of something that hunts by ambush. Monarch found her in the Arizona desert and built an outpost around her, which is an odd place for a creature that produces liquid nitrogen and thrives in cold. When Ghidorah called, she surfaced in a sandstorm of her own making. Her second act was worse. In 2024, she tore through Rome, wrecked the historic center, and made the mistake of standing between Godzilla and a meal. He killed her in the Colosseum, and then curled up inside it to sleep. Her namesake is the 6-headed monster Odysseus sailed past in Homer. Behemoth. Part woolly mammoth, part giant ground sloth. 107.8 meters tall, and armed with tusks that curve up past his own head. Behemoth was found dormant in Brazil's Tinguá Biological Reserve, where Monarch raised Outpost 58 around him. He is also known by the regional name Mapinguari, a hairy forest cryptid from Amazonian folklore. and his biblical namesake is the unkillable land beast described in the Book of Job. Ghidorah's call sent him rampaging through Rio de Janeiro, but Monarch files list him as a protector, because everywhere he settles the forest comes back thicker than before. He claimed a stretch of the Amazon as his territory after the war ended. In the comic Godzilla Dominion, the Titan Amhuluk snapped one of his tusks trying to take that territory, and Godzilla personally came down and chased Amhuluk off. Leviathan. Titanus Leviathan spent an unknown span of centuries at the bottom of Loch Ness in Scotland, with Monarch's Outpost 49 sunk into the water above him. And no, the film never lets you get a proper look. He exists on screen as an X-ray silhouette on a Castle Bravo monitor, and as a tracked contact drifting through the North Atlantic during the global Titan uprising, before Madison Russell's use of the Orca device at Fenway Park pulled every awakened Titan off its rampage. He is named for the sea monster of the Hebrew Bible, coiled and unkillable, and behind the scenes he was originally placed in the Indian Ocean before production moved him. Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, later established Loch Ness as the site of a rift leading into Axis Mundi, which raises questions nobody has answered. Mokele-Mbembe. Named after the sauropod-like river cryptid reported for over a century in the Congo Basin, Titanus Mokele-Mbembe is one of the frustrating entries on Monarch's active list, a name on a screen with no confirmed appearance behind it. He is referenced in the King of the Monsters novelization and glimpsed only as a designation in the film, filed among the African Titans awakened in 2019. What the name tells you is how Monarch's taxonomy actually works. Agents catalog local legends first, then assume there is a sleeping animal underneath the legend, then go looking. The pattern held for Rodan's fire demon, for Behemoth's May Pinguary, and for the Bunyip. Somewhere in the Congo, by that logic, there is a very large neck attached to something Monarch has already given a filing number. Kika. Introduced in the 2019 King of the Monsters novelization and later drawn for the comic Godzilla Dominion, Kika is a cephalopod titan kept at a classified Monarch site in the Indian Ocean, where the staff simply called it the Kraken. The official name comes from Kiribati mythology, where Kika is the octopus child of the creator god who pushed the islands up out of the sea. Monarch's file lists two abilities that make it a nightmare to contain. It can camouflage its entire body against any surface, and it can change sex, which means a single specimen is a potential breeding population. In Dominion, it challenges Godzilla directly and gets a lesson in hierarchy for its trouble. It is one of several Titans that submitted rather than died, which in this franchise counts as a happy ending. Typhon. Outpost 92 sits at Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and the thing underneath it is named for the Greek father of monsters, the storm giant with 100 serpent heads who fought Zeus for the sky. Monarch monitors track Titanus Typhon striking the Philippines during the 2019 uprising and then moving into the South China Sea before the Orca call put him down. He was never given a full reveal on screen, only a designation and a moving contact. The naming is a nice piece of internal continuity, though. In Greek myth, Typhon fathered Scylla, and Monarch has a Titan named Scylla in Arizona. Whether the taxonomy team meant to imply a family relationship or just liked the mythology, they built a genealogy into their own paperwork. Margygr Monarch found her dead. The King of the Monsters novelization describes a female Titan recovered from the Arctic, killed by another Titan, her body hauled back to the underwater base at Castle Bravo for dissection. She is named Margygr, after a species of mermaid described in the Norwegian educational text The King's Mirror, written around the year 1250, which portrays her as a sea creature with a woman's upper body and a fish's tail, and treats sighting one as an omen of storms. Unused concept art matching her description appears in The Art of Godzilla King of the Monsters, confirming she was designed and then cut from the film. That makes her a rare kind of monster, rejected from a Godzilla movie, then quietly canonized in print anyway. Baphomet. Buried at Outpost 68 in Volubilis, Morocco, among Roman ruins, Titanus Baphomet takes his name from the demon that King Philip IV of France accused the Knights Templar of worshipping in 1307, an accusation that helped him destroy the order and seize its money. The Titan himself appears only as an X-ray scan and a tracked contact, showing up on Monarch maps first in Mexico and later in the Canary Islands during the 2019 rampage before the Orca stopped him. There is a production wrinkle worth knowing. During filming, Baphomet was located in Arizona, and he was only relocated to Morocco in post-production, which is why one monitor in the finished film still shows him sitting in the American Southwest where Scylla ended up instead. Sekhmet. Outpost 65 was built directly under Cairo, and director Michael Dougherty has described the Titan inside it as resembling a sphinx or a lioness, which lines up with her namesake. The Egyptian goddess Sekhmet was the lion-headed daughter of Ra, goddess of war, plague, and healing all at once. So violent that the other gods had to trick her into drinking beer dyed red to look like blood in order to stop her from wiping out humanity. Monarch Sekhmet moved westward from Cairo during the uprising and ended it back where she started. The detail that has kept fans arguing since 2024 is that Godzilla x Kong later established Cairo as the site of a vile vortex leading directly into the Hollow Earth. Nobody mentions Sekhmet. Yamata no Orochi. Outpost 91 is at the base of Mount Fuji, and unlike most of the background titans, this one gets an actual shot. Security footage of something enormous smashing its way up out of the containment facility as the alarms go. The name belongs to the eight-headed, eight-tailed serpent of Japanese mythology, the one so large its body spanned 8 valleys, which drank the sake left out by a terrified village and lost its head, or rather all 8 of them, to the storm god Susanoo. The sword Kusanagi, one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan, was supposedly pulled from its tail. There is a small continuity oddity worth noting. On the final Monarch map, Orochi's name appears with no Titanus prefix, unlike every other entry, though an earlier map in the same film gives him one. Bunyip. Outpost 99 sits beneath Uluru in Central Australia, the sandstone monolith formerly known as Ayers Rock, and the titan sleeping under it carries the name of a water spirit from Aboriginal Australian tradition. Accounts of the Bunyip vary by nation and region, but the common thread is a creature that lives in swamps, billabongs, and creek beds, makes a booming cry at night, and drags off anyone careless enough to camp too close to the water. Monarch's version broke containment in 2019 and tracked northwest, then northeast across the continent, before the Orca signal from Fenway Park stopped him mid-rampage. Like most of the background titans, he is a designation, a movement path, and a myth. He remains, as far as the files show, somewhere in Australia. Quetzalcoatl. Machu Picchu in Peru is the site of Outpost 57, and the titan named after the Mesoamerican feathered serpent god was one of the entries awakened by Ghidorah, tracked moving north through the Americas before the Orca shut the rampage down. The naming is geographically strange and deliberately so. Quetzalcoatl belongs to Central Mexican tradition, worshipped by the Aztec and their predecessors as a god of wind, learning, and the morning star, while Machu Picchu is Inca and roughly 4,500 kilometers away. Either Monarch's taxonomists were sloppy, or the implication is that the same titan was seen across both civilizations under different names, and the file simply took whichever one the agent knew. The franchise has never clarified, and the fandom has never stopped arguing about it. Abaddon, the name comes from Hebrew scripture, where Abaddon means a place of destruction, and later becomes the angel of the bottomless pit, and Monarch attached it to something with 8 legs. Titanus Abaddon appeared first as a name in Godzilla King of the Monsters, then finally got a proper showcase in the 2025 graphic anthology MonsterVerse Declassified, which frames him as potentially the forebear of every arachnid alive today. That is the quiet horror of Monarch's taxonomy. Their working theory is that many ordinary animals are miniaturized descendants of titans that shrank as the planet's background radiation dropped. Under that model, every spider in your house is a scaled-down Abaddon, several 100 million years diluted. Whether the comics intended that as a joke or a threat is genuinely hard to say. Amhuluk, roughly 117.5 meters tall, black-bodied, with 10 yellow eyes that have no pupils and 4 tendrils tipped in broad pads trailing back from his face, Amhuluk is one of the few titans Monarch classifies as florafauna, a designation otherwise reserved for the plant-animal hybrids of Skull Island. Trees grow out of his back. His forelimbs are ropes of loose vine that stretch to absurd lengths and end in 4-clawed hands. Monarch's file word for him is biopathogenic. He carries toxin emitters capable of poisoning entire river systems and channels, and he thrives on rot. He is named for a monster of the Kalapuya people of Oregon associated with drowning, fog, and disease. In Godzilla Dominion, he invaded Behemoth's Amazon territory and broke a tusk doing it, then fled the moment Godzilla arrived. Tiamat. Named for the primordial saltwater goddess of Babylonian myth, the one whose split corpse becomes the sky and the earth in the Enuma Elish, Tiamat is a serpentine sea titan whose lair sits beneath the Arctic ice at one of the planet's radiation hotspots. Her file lists water manipulation, an acidic breath, and vocal mimicry, meaning she can imitate the calls of other creatures to lure them close. In 2024, Godzilla came north specifically to take her territory, because he needed the power stored in it before facing what was rising out of the hollow earth. He killed her, coiled up in the radiation-saturated cavern she had claimed, and absorbed enough energy to physically transform. Every fan who complained that Pink Godzilla came out of nowhere should know, it came out of Tiamat, Camazotz. His name is Quiche for Death Bat, taken from the Mesoamerican bat god of night, sacrifice, and the underworld, and the 2021 graphic novel Kingdom Kong makes him Kong's most personal enemy after the Skullcrawlers. He is a gray, armor-plated bat titan with a broken left horn, shredded wings lined with bone spikes, and eyes gone pale and useless after millennia in total darkness. He navigates by echolocation instead, and his supersonic screech is loud enough to scramble another titan's senses. Awakened by Ghidorah in 2019, he fought Monarch pilots in a dogfight over San Diego, then returned to the hollow earth beneath Skull Island. 2 years later, when a permanent storm blotted out the island's sun, he came back up to kill Kong and take the throne. Kong sent him home. Doug. He is 65 feet tall, which sounds enormous until you remember Godzilla is 393, and Monarch's own materials call him officially the smallest titan. Titanus Doug is a squat, wide-mouthed, hollow-earth reptile with a permanently cheerful expression, first spotted in 2021 slinking up behind Kong to steal a critter Kong had just caught, and again in 2024 pulling the same trick and getting away with it. The name is not mythological. Legendary's crew named him after a person, and it stuck all the way into official canon paperwork, which is how the MonsterVerse ended up with Titanus Behemoth, Titanus Tiamat, and Titanus Doug on the same list. He got his own story in the 2025 anthology MonsterVerse Declassified. It is mostly action and almost no dialogue. Mechagodzilla, standing 121.9 meters, taller than the animal it was built to kill. Mechagodzilla was Apex Cybernetics's answer to the question of who rules the planet, and the answer was supposed to be a corporation. Walter Simmons built it in secret under Hong Kong, powered it with energy harvested from the hollow earth, and controlled it through a neural link running out of King Ghidorah's severed skull, with pilot Ren Serizawa jacked into the dead alien's nervous system. That was the flaw. Once fed a live power source, Ghidorah's residual consciousness took the machine for itself, killed Simmons in his own boardroom, and went hunting. It beat Godzilla in a straight fight. It lost because Kong took the axe to it while Godzilla poured atomic breath down the blade. Snare Hunter Queen. In 1973, Hank Marlowe pointed at the trees on Skull Island and told the Monarch scientists that the birdsong they were hearing was not birds, it was ants, enormous ones, living in the canopy, mimicking calls to draw prey underneath them. The film never shows them, and it took the 2023 tabletop title Kong, Skull Island Cinematic Adventure, to finally put them on the page under the name Snare Hunter, with the classification Cantus silva ant. The Queen is the Titan scale specimen, a colony matriarch big enough to earn her own entry in Monarch's files rather than being lumped in with the workers. It is a small detail, but it captures why Skull Island works as a setting. The throwaway line about the noise in the trees was never a throwaway line. Kraken, Netflix's animated series Skull Island opened in 2023 by sinking a boat, and the thing that did it is formerly Titanoserpens marinus, a colossal bioluminescent sea serpent with a mouth that opens in segments and a body that lights up the water blue as it moves. It hunts by drawing prey toward the glow. It is one of the very few creatures on the show that Monarch classifies as a full Titan rather than island fauna, and it is one of the few things around Skull Island that will pick a fight with Kong on purpose. Kong won, as he tends to. The name is Norwegian, from the sailor's legend of the vast squid-like beast off the coast of Norway that could drag a ship down whole. Mantleclaw. Monarch Legacy of Monsters opens on a beach, and something on that beach that everyone assumed was volcanic rock stands up and turns out to be a crab. The Mantleclaw's shell is a near-perfect mimic of cooled lava, jagged and porous and dull black, and the show's visual effects team has said outright that the design came from standing on a real peninsula of lava rock and deciding to build a monster out of the material. It is one of the smaller titans on the roster, and it functions as the series' opening statement. The MonsterVerse is not just a handful of city-flattening giants, it is an entire hidden biology, and some of it is close enough to step on. Series co-creator Chris Black has called it a titan, though the show itself never bothers to. Endoswarmer. The Endoswarmers arrive in numbers. They are relatively small by Titan standards, armored, many-legged, and they move as a coordinated mass rather than as individuals, which is what makes them lethal to anything human-sized caught in the open. Keiko Randa describes them in the series as mutos, and co-creator Matt Fraction has said the whole point of putting them on screen was to remind an audience trained on Godzilla and Ghidorah that not every Titan is 400 feet tall. That is the genuinely useful idea buried in the show's creature design. The reason Titans went unnoticed for so long is not that they are all mountain-sized. It is that most of them are the size of a truck, live underground, and only surface when something disturbs the radiation gradient they follow. Ion Dragon. Take the mouth of an anglerfish, the thing that belongs 3 kilometers down in the dark, put it on a winged body, and drop it into a jungle. That was the design brief, and the result is the closest thing the first season of Monarch has to a genuine monster movie monster. The Ion Dragon appears at the end of the second episode and recurs across both the 1950s and the modern timeline, and it is the only creature in that season willing to square up to Godzilla himself. Its designers have cited flying fish, anglerfish, the Pokemon Aerodactyl, and Gyaos from the rival Gamera franchise as reference points. Kong, Skull Island alluded to something like it decades earlier. It feeds on radiation, and it breathes fire that is closer to a directed ion discharge. Frostvark. The best creature design in the whole MonsterVerse might belong to a mole. The Frostvark has the armored dorsal plating of a pangolin, the four-legged bulk of a bear, and a face ringed with glowing blue tendrils modeled on the nasal appendages of a star-nosed mole, which it uses to sense heat. Then it takes that heat. It drains warmth out of anything it touches and leaves it frozen solid, which is how a research plane in the Alaskan wilderness ends up as a shattered, ice-glazed wreck in Episode 3. The show's visual effects supervisor has named it his favorite Titan of the season, and it took a full redesign from scratch to get there. It is also the only creature introduced in Season 1 that never came back in Season 2. Endopede. The Endopede is what the Endoswarmer becomes, or at least the larger form the same biology produces. A segmented, chitinous horror with a jointed body, a heavy exoskeleton, and mandibles built for shearing, essentially a centipede scaled up past anything the fossil record allows. It surfaces late in the first season of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, in the 8th episode, and like the rest of the swarm biology, it is drawn toward nuclear radiation, which is exactly why it keeps turning up wherever humans have been careless. Monarch's own in-universe files declined to grant it Titan status and log it under the older MUTO designation instead, which is the classification the organization uses for anything it has confirmed exists but has not finished arguing about. Brambleboar. Somewhere between a wild pig and a walking thornbush, the Brambleboar surfaces in the 9th episode of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, in the strange half-world of Axis Mundi that sits between the surface and the hollow earth. Its body is armored in overlapping woody plates and bristling growths that read as vegetation until it charges. Apple's own promotional series filed it under Titan sightings, and that is essentially the extent of its official standing, because Monarch's in-universe manual lists it at only 5 to 10 feet tall, while simultaneously calling the 65-foot Doug the smallest Titan on record. In other words, by the franchise's own paperwork, the Brambleboar does not qualify. It is a very angry pig in a place where the laws of time do not entirely hold. Skar King. He rules by whip. The tyrant of the great apes in the hollow earth is smaller and leaner than Kong. Red-furred, scarred, with a hunched frame and a jaw full of broken teeth, and he compensates for the size difference with two things: a tribe of enslaved apes who fear him more than they fear dying, and a length of vertebrae tipped with a crystal shard that lets him inflict agony on the ancient ice titan Shimo whenever she hesitates. He has been confined to the subterranean realm for millennia, and everything he does in 2024 is aimed at reaching the surface with Shimo as a weapon. He killed his way to the top of a species, and then treated a titan far more powerful than himself as livestock. Kong froze him solid and shattered him in Rio. Suko. He is a juvenile ape, roughly the size of a small building, with an oversized head, a bad attitude, and every reason for it. Suko first appears in 2024 as one of Skar King's subjects, sent to attack Kong and thoroughly outmatched, and his early scenes are mostly biting, screaming, and trying to escape. What turns him is Kong dislocating and then resetting his own arm, and the slow realization that the giant ape dragging him around is not going to hurt him. He becomes Kong's guide through the hollow earth, then his adoptive son, and by the end he is the one holding the line beside him. In a franchise built on city-leveling violence, the emotional center of the fifth film is a bad-tempered orphan learning that a parent is a thing that exists. Shimo. At 114.3 meters on 4 legs, Shimo is one of the largest titans ever put on screen. An ancient quadruped with a wide, blunt skull, pale hide, and a breath that does not simply chill things but drops temperatures far enough to snap steel and glaciate open ground. The MonsterVerse's explanation for the last ice age is not orbital mechanics. It is her. She predates Godzilla's dominance of the surface, and she is naturally docile, which is precisely what made her exploitable. Skar King controls her through a crystal shard fused into a scar on the back of her neck, and every burst of frost she produces is produced under torture. The wound on her back is the whole story of the film in one image. Kong destroyed the crystal. She has been free since. Great Ape. Kong's species is formerly Apus giganticus, and for 5 films the running assumption was that he was the last of them. He is not. The Hollow Earth holds an entire population of great apes, a tribe living in the crimson wastes beyond the region Monarch had mapped, and Godzilla x Kong. The new empire gives several of them names: One Eye, Stone Fist, Catcher, Gnarled Finger, Boots, and Knob. They are smaller than Kong, leaner, adapted to a landscape with no water and no mercy, and they are held in place by fear rather than loyalty. The Iwi legends painted on Skull Island's cave walls turn out to be literal history. The apes were the surface world's protectors. The war between them and Godzilla's kind nearly ended both species, and the survivors went underground. Spineprowler. Introduced in the 2024 legendary graphic novel Godzilla x Kong, The Hunted, the Spineprowler is a giant feline titan whose scientific name, Osis predator, means bone predator, and whose common name comes from the pronounced ridge of vertebrae running down its back. They look like hairless cats scaled up past any reasonable size, with long canines and hooked claws on all 4 limbs that let them climb sheer cliff faces and drop onto prey from above. Their bones are porous, which makes them extraordinarily fast and, counterintuitively, harder to break. Monarch classifies their behavior as destroyer, while noting in the same file that they are fiercely nurturing toward their own cubs. One of them ambushed Kong and failed. A mother caught a human titan hunter off guard, and that went differently. Yuggoth. The name is lifted directly from H.P. Lovecraft's sonnet cycle Fungi from Yuggoth, and the design earns it. Yuggoth is a fungal titan with a hulking, ape-like frame that moves on 2 legs or 4, arms ending in 5 claw-like spikes, and no real head at all, just a crown of mushrooms and fungal growth where a skull should be. It debuted as the antagonist of the 2025 comic series Return to Skull Island, and returned in its 2026 sequel Escape from Skull Island. Its weapon is infection. It corrupts other creatures, turning their eyes black and their breath into a dark miasma, and it commands them and apparently sees through them. It raised an army of infected spine prowlers, hellhawks, and death jackals in the Hollow Earth. It can also swat Kong across a valley. Titan X. The newest titan on the list is called Kokai by the islanders who worship her, and she is the focus of the 2026 second season of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. The design is a Portuguese man-o'-war, crossed with a colossal squid and finished with the face of a moray eel, 6 tentacles armed with serrated hooks, purple crystalline spines, and a translucent body that glows blue and turns red when she is angry. She is estimated at 20,000 tons, moves at over 40 knots, regenerates severed limbs, and migrates a fixed circuit of the Pacific once every 15 years before returning to Axis Mundi to hibernate. She fought Godzilla to a standstill and matched Kong blow for blow, and she did all of it while trying to protect a single egg. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.